Tonight, protesters swamped the city. Opposing sides of the pandemic powers debate take to the streets. The latest live. Also, Cricket Australia's bombshell admission, new fallout from Tim Paine's shock resignation. Full coverage. Police probe what motivated a vile attack on a crossbencher's daughter. Freedom weekend, but some Victorians are still being caught out by early rule changes. And negotiations with Novak Djokovic as the Australian Open officially signs up to Victoria's hardline vaccine mandate.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Mike Amor starts now.
Good evening. Melbourne has again been swamped by tens of thousands of protesters, but for the first time, opposing sides of the pandemic powers debate have taken to the streets at the same time. Police were also out in force, but today's action has been largely peaceful.
From the steps of Parliament all the way to Bourke Street Mall.
Save Victoria!
Save Victoria! An overflow of protesters. Tens of thousands against the government's pandemic bill. Some say the biggest demonstration yet.
I'm an allied health professional and I've lost my job because of this. I won't subject to a experimental vaccination.
So I'm 12 years old and I'm being excluded from society because I'm not vaccinated.
We want people to have a choice, make their own decisions.
At the same time, a kilometre away, this group had very different ideologies.
We're here to send a message of solidarity with health workers. We're here to send a message that is pro-health, because at the moment we are very concerned that the anti-vax movement has joined forces with the far right.
They call themselves anti-fascist and pro-vaccination, outraged by recent at the steps of Parliament.
Oh, when the far right's on the attack, what do we do?
It's really important to oppose these anti-vax far-right thugs. We can't let these people take the streets.
Public health policies were really positive and saved people's lives and allowed them to enjoy, in the long term, freedoms that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
There were small clashes with infiltrators from opposing groups, but luckily for the huge number of police, they marched in opposite directions.
It's the first time Melbourne has seen a counter-protest against the anti-lockdown demonstrators. This group, smaller in numbers, but just as vocal. The much larger anti-government crowd swamped Flagstaff Gardens, a sea of flags and placards.
International chorus is building and getting louder and louder each and every single day.
Similar scenes across the country as COVID rallies spread, including Perth, Brisbane and Sydney. Back here, the large crowd settled in for an impromptu garden concert as two groups disrupted Saturday afternoon across the CBD, not singing to the same tune.
And Tegan, the protests are continuing as we go to air.
It is, Mike. You can see behind me there's still quite a lot of demonstrators down here at Parliament House, and right now as we're going to air, the police have finally been able to open up Spring Street. These are the first few cars that have been able to come through here this afternoon. These live chopper shots that are coming into our newsroom, you can see the protesters are still down here with their flags. They're still banging their drums as well as singing down here. It'll be interesting to see how many are down here to stay this evening. Because of this, police haven't been able to give us any official word on exactly the behaviour of the crowd today, other than to say that both the anti-fascist as well as the anti-government protesters, no arrests have been made. Mike?
Live at State Parliament, Tegan Doling, thank you. The cost of policing the pandemic has been revealed. Victoria Police spent at least $117 million in 2020, with that figure expected to grow when this financial year is added. More than 1,500 police and PSOs were taken off regular duties to enforce emergency orders, border closures and hotel quarantine. Cricket Australia's new board admits it would have removed Tim Paine if it was in charge at the time of his sexting scandal. The now former captain had little to say in Hobart today as the urgent process to decide on the right replacement begins.
If Tim Paine was hoping for any sort of fresh start today.
Speaking of that, sorry,
There was only disappointment for the former captain.
Would you like to say anything to cricket fans?
Rain saw play delayed, but the questions kept coming.
Jimmy, you're disappointed this is surfaced now?
4 years after he sent inappropriate texts and nude pictures to a co-worker in Tasmania, the 37-year-old had nothing more to say a day after he sensationally stood aside as Test captain. The heads of Cricket Australia today conceded it was a mess and say they would have handled things differently if they were at the helm in 2017.
We, as an organisation, have more to do and will do more in this area.
At an online conference late this afternoon.
Personally, when I joined the board 2 years ago, I had a very brief conversation where I was informed there had been an incident with Tim a few years earlier.
No word yet if Payne will play in next month's Test.
The Board of Australian Cricket is comfortable that he's available as a player.
His coach doing his best to avoid cricket's biggest story in years.
We couldn't be happier with how our preparation's been. We just can't get on the ground because it's so wet at the moment in every weekend.
His teammates trained on the Gold Coast. No doubt for once they were happy to be in a COVID bubble with some time to process these shock developments.
This morning after the night before, that's what it feels like. How did that happen?
If he's the best wicketkeeper in Australia, he should be chosen as a wicketkeeper.
There's still no decision as to who will be Australia's next Test captain. We are told that Steve Smith's name is still in the mix, but much of the talk today was for Pat Cummins.
He's articulate, he's socially aware, he's well read for God's sake, but the one concern is that he's a fast bowler.
I've been looking up to him since I was a kid, and to see him go that far, it's always good to watch.
One of their own, Australian Test captain.
Oh, he'll go well.
A decision on his replacement is expected early next week. Evan Batten, 7 News.
And Laura Spurway is at Cricket Australia headquarters tonight. And Laura, they'll want to get the choice of new captain right.
They will, Mike, and Cricket Australia has made it very clear that with the Ashes just 18 days away, it will need to be a very quick process, but it will be thorough. There will be background checks on all possible candidates to avoid issues like this propping up again. As you heard there, Pat Cummins is tipped to be the likely favourite. CA wouldn't weigh in on that, but they did say that Steve Smith is available. He will be considered, despite the circumstances in which his captaincy ended in 2018. So the clock is ticking, Mike, on a very important decision.
Laura, thank you. Upper House MP Andy Medic has defended his family's version of events over the vile attack on his daughter. As police continue to investigate the motivation of the attack, the controversial pandemic laws remain in limbo.
Condemning a sickening attack on an MP's daughter.
There's just no place for that kind of violence.
As police continue to investigate the motivation behind it, Keelan Medic, daughter of Animal Justice MP Andy Medic, says she was attacked for being political.
I saw the police statement released as well. It seemed to have a slightly different viewpoint.
Victoria Police say a woman was spray painting over a poster when she was approached by a man. The pair had an argument before she threw the spray can towards him as she attempted to leave. The man followed the woman and threw the can, which struck her in the head. Andy Medic says he absolutely stands by his daughter and her version of events, acknowledging that police may not have the full story because the trans community don't always trust police.
If they're related to the political situation, are totally and completely and utterly unacceptable.
Standing with protesters hasn't helped the likeability of the state opposition. News poll shows the Labor Party is still the preferred government. Its primary vote has increased from 42.9% in 2018 to 44% this year, while the coalition sits at 36%. When it comes to satisfaction of leadership, 56% of people were happy with the Premier. 34% gave the tick of approval to opposition leader Matthew Guy.
Matthew Guy is relatively new in this position now, and he will be moving forward with good new policies as we come towards the state election.
The more immediate problem for the opposition is the pandemic legislation. They have 18 amendments they'd like to get through, but say the state government haven't approached them to negotiate because they're furiously negotiating with the crossbench.
There is a risk that crossbenchers will go weak.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
Vaccinated international students have been given the green light to return to Melbourne as millions of Victorians soak up more freedoms this weekend. But some have been left behind with early changes to key rules.
While many Melburnians are rejoicing restrictions eased a week early, some rule changes have caught people off guard.
I got very upset on the way home from school. Dad told me that I couldn't play.
Park Orchard's basketballer Bailey Miles has been sidelined from her under-14s team this weekend, locked out of the stadium. Late yesterday, the Eastern District's junior clubs were informed everyone aged over 12 and 2 months must be fully vaccinated to enter the sporting venue.
My first instinct was I hope I've got enough players for Saturday's game. Fortunately, we've got 5 that can play, but I'm down 3.
12-year-old Bailey has already had 1 dose and is booked in for her second jab next Thursday.
I was kind of confused because I played last week and now it doesn't make sense because the vaccination percentage rate is higher this week and we can't play.
Look, I think a common sense approach could have applied, but there are a number of kids to consider.
Common sense too for international students returning who no longer have to quarantine as long as they're fully vaccinated with a TGA authorised vaccine. Priority entry is being given to medical and research students.
All those great discoveries that we make and have put into place that people have seen through COVID, they are fundamentally dependent on the sort of funding that comes in when we welcome students from other countries.
Almost 50,000 international students enrolled at Victorian universities remain offshore due to border closures.
There is a tourism dividend that comes from international students. They're incredibly important to the university sector and they have proven to be very important from a workforce point of view.
And restaurant owners are ready to welcome foreign students back with open arms.
The international student or the international travel visa people that come into Australia, they're the backbone of hospitality. Without them, we're struggling. You're so desperate for staff. I'm working every day because I can't find staff to work.
1,166 new cases were recorded today with another 5 deaths, including a child under 10 with underlying medical conditions. Hospitalisations have dropped to 312 and we are a mere 1% away from hitting the 90% double vaccinated target. The Chief Health Officer releasing a video message handing responsibility over to the public with a COVID checklist.
Living with this virus in a way that's safe for everyone means being open about having COVID and letting people know.
And Jade Vincent, Melburnians are making the most of what's being dubbed Freedom Weekend.
They are, Mike. It's great to see the bars and restaurants here along South Bank packed once again with density limits scrapped, masks no longer required and the weather improving. We are seeing more and more people filling up our bars. The Catering and Restaurant Association is expecting that they'll rake in around $200 million in revenue over this Freedom Weekend. That's what they would typically make in a week. Mike?
Jade, thank you. A toddler is in a critical condition after being found unconscious in a pool at Crown. The 2-year-old was treated at the hotel and then taken to the Royal Children's Hospital around 10 o'clock last night. The child remains in a critical condition. The painstaking search for William Tyrrell's remains inched forward today with officers sifting through dirt in bushland at Kendall on the New South Wales mid-north coast. A Hessian bag was found and taken away for examination. The boy's foster parents are preparing to face court on Tuesday, charged with the common assault of a child. Tennis Australia officials have confirmed Novak Djokovic will have to prove he is fully vaccinated to play in January's Australian Open. Launching the event today, they revealed they're negotiating with the Serbian's team and expect an answer within weeks.
A new 5,000-seat show court unveiled for the Open, which will return to full crowd capacity.
And an incredible demonstration to the world that our city, our state, our nation is back and buzzing and open for business.
Make it 9 for Novak! But now negotiations with 9-time winner Novak Djokovic. All players must be fully vaccinated.
He has indicated that it's a private decision for him and at the right time he will tell us.
and I know that he wants to play it. He's clearly indicated that.
Mr Tiley appears confident.
No one at this point has said they're not coming. We don't expect anyone to say that.
Already confirmed to play former champions Rafa Nadal and Serena Williams and current champion Naomi Osaka. More than 80% of touring professionals now vaccinated, thanks to Victoria's hard line.
I think we've contributed to the world tennis community about the requirement of being vaccinated.
And other Grand Slam tournaments will follow the vaccination hard line.
I don't think it's going to be an uncommon condition in 2022. I think around the world we're going to see the same thing.
Chinese player Peng Shuai missing since she claimed a Communist Party official sexually assaulted her was expected to play in the Open.
We want her to know, as a community, as not only a global tennis community, but as a community here in Australia, we'll do everything we can to support her well-being.
And Tennis Australia also announced today another extension. The Australian Open will now be held here at least until 2044. They see next year as a blueprint for world sport.
We are going to showcase to the rest of the world what a full event looks like, how you can live in a safe community, and we should be incredibly proud of it.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
A North Melbourne star is dealing with another cancer shock. Jackie Felgate, the thoughts of the football world are with Ben Cunnington tonight.
They certainly are. Hello, Mike. The Kangaroo star will undergo a round of chemotherapy but is expected to make a full recovery. We'll have the very latest shortly. Also coming up, how a star saint plans to hit back against the critics in 2022. Exclusive access as Brad Hill reveals the hit and miss position switch that's here to stay. Plus, England out of quarantine and straight to the golf course as James Pattinson produces a peach. The Greek freak denies Melbourne's Josh Giddey, and Mike will also have more on the developing Tim Payne saga. I'll see you soon.
OK, see you then. Thanks, Jack. Melbourne's red-hot property market could be set to plateau. Next, what the experts are saying and how the market fared today. Also, police investigate as a motorcycle rider dies in a Docklands crash. The threat of more COVID lockdowns looming large in Europe. One country has already acted. And why last night's supermoon wasn't so super. A motorbike rider has died and his passenger is fighting for life after a crash in Docklands. They collided with a car just after 9 o'clock last night. The driver wasn't hurt and stopped to help. Police are still investigating exactly what went wrong. Real estate experts say Melbourne's white-hot property market could be starting to cool. It's thanks to supply catching up with demand. And while it's good news for buyers, it could signal a warning for sellers.
First home buyers Joe and Vanessa had struggled to get a foot in the Melbourne market.
Some of the houses we were looking at were selling 200,000 over the reserve. So.
Today was their day.
The property is going! Join me in congratulating them, and the property is sold!
The couple was house hunting throughout lockdown. Back then, people were reluctant to sell and buyers were willing to pay top dollar. But as restrictions ease and confidence grows, there are more properties up for grabs. This week, 1,250 went to auction. Next Saturday, 1,357 will go under the hammer. Experts say it's an early sign of a plateau.
It's definitely evening out as supply catches up with demand. It won't necessarily shift to a buyer's market, but obviously the buyers will have more to choose from.
Fresh figures from Ray White Group also show that competition is cooling. In September, when stock was lean, there was an average 4 bidders at every auction. That's now dropped to 3.1 in the first half of November.
The interest rates are low, so money's really cheap. You heard me say it during the auction, and buyers are popping up every day. It's not only the ones that have been waiting during lockdown.
Economists say the only thing likely to slow growth in the property market is a significant rise in interest rates. But that's not expected until at least 2024.
Normally I would believe that the RBA would have lifted interest rates to temper an overheated market, but that hasn't happened. So from that perspective, that's why the market has been continuing to grow.
Jodie Lee, 7 News.
And today's figures are just in from the REIV, with the clearance rate trending down 80% today. That's compared with 82% last week and 83 the week before. 190 properties have been passed in, 743 were sold at auction. Thousands of homes were left without electricity after a high-speed crash in Sydney left a power pole split in two. Police blocked off the road as sparks flew from the electrical wires. 2 men were taken to hospital with injuries. Police are investigating whether the driver was street racing at the time. Parts of Europe are going back into a hard COVID lockdown. The Austrian government brought back restrictions overnight with a plan to fine people who fail to get vaccinated as a fourth wave of the virus sweeps the continent.
The Christmas tree is up in Vienna, perhaps though too soon, with an all-out effort to save the holidays.
Meine Damen und Herren, mir ist bewusst, dass wir den geimpften
I'm aware we're asking a lot of the vaccinated, the Austrian Chancellor said, as he announced a 20-day hard lockdown across the country, blaming a lack of solidarity. The nation has one of Western Europe's lowest vaccination rates. Just 68% of the population has been double jabbed. Simply not enough. A lockdown for the unvaccinated only hasn't worked, so severe restrictions for everyone are returning.
I think it's a very hard decision, but the decision is okay, but it's a little bit too late.
Well, it's hard before Christmas, of course, but I think it's the only way at the moment. Hopefully it will be opened in the mid of December again.
Austria's government now considering fining or jailing anyone who hasn't had the vaccine by February next year. As winter looms, cases are spiking across the continent. Boris Johnson this week warned that COVID storm clouds gathering over Europe could wash up on British shores, but the infection rate is beginning to fall here, and so far the government has resisted calls for tighter restrictions, rolling out more booster jabs instead. But Germany says its hospitals are dangerously full. The health minister refusing to rule out a lockdown too. The Christmas market in Nuremberg is coming down just after it went up, leaving little hope this festive season will be festive at all. In London, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
Hopes of seeing a supermoon in Melbourne last night were dashed for most due to cloud cover. The 97% partial lunar eclipse had been expected to turn the moon a shade of red. Vic Roads is working to clear a backlog of drivers' licence applications. Next, how you can speed up the path to your P-plates. Also, history at the White House, a woman in charge. A bombshell verdict in the trial that's gripped America. And in the blink of an eye, the new rapid test saving babies' lives. Vic Roads is using pop-up testing sites to help clear a backlog of licence tests which were cancelled during lockdown. More than 20,000 learner drivers had their driving tests cancelled during the latest restrictions.
Will Robinson has just finished Year 12 exams. This was his next big test.
I passed, I'm very happy, and I'm glad to get my Ps. It's been a long time coming.
The 18-year-old was meant to sit his driver's test in August, but it was cancelled during COVID restrictions. 20,000 learner drivers had their tests postponed. Now, instead of waiting months for a new appointment at a regular Vic Roads site, they can book into one of 3 pop-up testing centres.
Each pop-up centre is averaging about 500 and 600 tests a day, so we're literally powering through that backlog.
It's hoped the backlog will be cleared in a matter of weeks. Many learners clocked up well over the required 120 hours behind the wheel during lockdown, but traffic has now returned to normal, posing a new hazard.
A lot of hours that people were doing beforehand, where they were doing it in empty roads, and now it's much busier, so just familiarising yourselves with where you're about to do your test.
The pop-up Vic Roads sites can be found at Ringwood, Coolaroo and Pakenham. 17,000 tests have already been rebooked.
We know the importance of getting to TAFE, getting to university, getting to work.
And enjoying newfound independence.
I'm going out to dinner with a couple of mates, and now I have my Ps, it definitely makes it a lot easier.
Melina Saris, 7 News.
A teenager who shot and killed 2 people during a Black Lives Matter protest in the United States has won his bid for freedom. A jury has cleared Kyle Rittenhouse, accepting the then 17-year-old was acting in self-defence.
5 charges,
not guilty.
5 verdicts.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Each a bigger bolt of relief.
Not guilty.
The accused vigilante
Not guilty.
on all counts. During evidence, he'd cried, recounting one of the killings. Today, Kyle Rittenhouse wept again.
This is just a dark, dark day for America.
I feel like they made the right choice. You know, it was simple self-defense.
In the heat of last year's Kenosha street violence, the then 17-year-old took a military assault weapon to help protect a car dealership from protesters. He shot dead 2, wounded a 3rd.
I think it's a victory for the 1,000-year-old right of self-defense and our young hero, Kyle.
The president saying he and many Americans are concerned and angry, but...
I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works and we have to abide by it.
In fact, before the trial, the defence lawyers tested their case on 2 mock juries. One heard the young Kyle Rittenhouse testify, the other did not. The difference in reactions convinced the lawyers to take their biggest gamble and put their client on the stand.
It was the difference between an acquittal and a guilty.
In the United States, Tim Lester, 7 News.
Kamala Harris has become the first woman to hold presidential powers in the US. The Vice President was leader of the free world for 85 minutes while President Joe Biden went under anaesthetic for a colonoscopy. The White House says the procedure was routine and the 79-year-old Biden is fit and healthy. Before the procedure, he completed his first traditional Thanksgiving turkey party. A whole load of cash has brought a California freeway to a standstill. Money fell from the back of an armoured car, stopping traffic as drivers raced for a free payday.
This is insane! Oh my gosh!
The cash was made up of mostly $1 and $20 notes. Police warn anyone who grabbed money and didn't hand it over could be facing charges. Groundbreaking new software is helping diagnose one of the most common ailments suffered by newborns. The technology detects jaundice in the blink of an eye and has scope to be used for other illnesses as well.
It's incredibly common, affecting up to 85% of newborns, but jaundice isn't always picked up at the first signs. That was the case for little May.
We spoke to the paediatrician just before she was discharged and he took her bloods but said, don't worry, go home, and got a call back saying that we needed to come back into hospital. It was quite stressful.
Often the condition, which appears as a yellow pigmentation of the skin and eyes, resolves quickly, but it can lead to serious complications if severe cases are left untreated.
Brain damage is one of the results, and not only do you have fatalities, you also have people with ongoing need for care. Earlier intervention is good.
New imaging software developed by UniSA researchers does exactly that. The cameras detect jaundice within just a second, triggering the necessary phototherapy treatment. Testing of the software so far has been limited by pandemic restrictions, but given more time, researchers believe it could be game-changing for hospitals monitoring all types of conditions.
Evidence of seizures or the heart stopping or going slowly or quickly. I think we will get to the point where there's a camera installed over every patient.
Taylor Jones, 7 News.
Millions of Victorians are bracing for higher energy bills in the summer months. Next, how to keep your air conditioner from costing you a fortune. Anger over a dangerous stunt at the races. And the never-seen-before Beatles tapes. As temperatures finally climb in the coming weeks, so too will the cost of electricity and gas. Tonight, new research reveals the best way to slash hundreds off your bill and avoid air conditioning units hiking up the price.
Paying the energy bill has been an all-too-familiar headache for Nicole Robinson.
Energy bills used to be just over $1,200 for 1 quarter, and I realised I just could not afford that at all.
The single mum of 2 made the switch to smart energy to cut costs.
I don't have to police the amount of electricity we use anymore.
And simple measures could be the key to slash hundreds off the quarterly bill.
New Canstar Blue research has found that almost 2/3 of Australians dread receiving their summer energy bill, and air conditioning is one of the biggest contributors to those rising costs.
It's a bit like a car. You need to make sure your car's serviced and you need to make sure your air conditioner is always serviced.
On top of regularly unclogging the unit, experts say when installing the machine on the ceiling or wall, sizing is important and sensors need to be properly calibrated.
Try to set your air conditioner at the temperature range between 21 and 23 degrees. Try to start it earlier in the morning if it's going to be a really hot day.
Along with the aircon, cutting back on washing and drying could save $160 per quarter, using the oven less $120, and selling a second fridge could cut $40 off your bill.
Energy experts also say it's important to check if you're on a single rate or flexible usage tariff and to be aware of peak rates that can apply over summer.
Talk to your provider to understand your tariff and your options. Check over your bill to see what kind of energy you're using.
Angelique Opie, 7 News.
Fans around the world are counting down to the biggest Beatles event in decades. It's a 6-hour documentary, more than 50 years in the making, using film never seen before.
2, 3, 4.
This is a time machine to transport the hearts and minds of fans in their millions to January 1969.
Bit faster, do you think? Bit faster.
Unseen for more than half a century, 57 hours of colour film, 130 hours of audio. 22 days in the life of Paul, George, Ringo and John.
And now your host for this evening, the Bottles.
The Beatles got me through the lockdown. I'm always going to think back on the pandemic and they're going to be, they got me through it.
Sir Peter Jackson, Beatles superfan, whose painstaking techniques have transformed documentary storytelling. He spent 4 years in darkened rooms applying that rare talent to his newest masterpiece.
50 hours, 60 hours of new Beatles footage. It's the most intimate, personal, raw footage of any band, and the band happens to be the Beatles. So I'm still shaking my head in disbelief.
This 1970 documentary, Let It Be, is the source of the unused footage, kept hidden from the world for decades.
Don't let me down.
The Beatles didn't want it to be seen, so if they don't want something to be seen, it's easy.
So here we are in vault number 3, where we keep much of the footage.
They have a big vault which I got to visit, the secret vault in an undisclosed location, and they have not wanted anybody to see it.
Until now, Paul, Ringo and Yoko Ono handing Sir Peter the keys.
Oh, you recording our conversation?
To create a documentary of a documentary.
When they realised that he was filming their conversations, usually John or George would turn the amp up really loud and just strum the guitar. Not playing anything, just twang, twang, twang.
Jackson's tech wizards pioneering ways of exposing the unheard past.
But of course, with this technology we've got, we can strip away the guitar and reveal these hidden conversations that they didn't want anyone to hear.
But it's going to be such a comical thing, like in 50 years' time. They broke up because Yoko sat on an amp. Yeah! Get back, George!
Get Back premieres worldwide next week. Patrick Burns, 7 News.
So good. A man who ran on the track during race 8 at Moonee Valley last night is facing a lengthy ban. The offender was detained after jumping the fence and running along the turf just metres from the horses as they approached the finish. Racing authorities say they're taking it extremely seriously, adding such idiotic behaviour jeopardises the safety of the horses and jockeys. Sport is next with Jackie Felgate and Jack. Tim Payne's ashes might not be over yet.
Hello, Mike. Yes, Cricket Australia has spoken for the first time since yesterday's bombshell announcement. Coming up next, why Tim Payne might still be walking out at the Gabba as the old enemy enjoys their first day of freedom. Carnage at the SCG as James Pattinson shows he's still got plenty left in the tank. A trimmed-down star reveals how the Saints plan to get back off the canvas in 2022. And when Melbourne's Josh Giddey met the Greek freak. Welcome back. Cricket Australia insists Tim Payne can still play a part in this summer's Ashes series. Let's return now to Laura Spurway. Good evening, Laura. The Aussies are still preparing for Payne to take his place behind the stumps at the Gabba.
They are, Jack, but Cricket Australia today revealed they were already going to look at a succession plan for Tim Paine this summer, assuming that this Ashes series may be his last. It comes as a group of the Aussies trained on the Gold Coast today, including Tim Paine's likely successor, Pat Cummins. Potential vice-captain Steve Smith was also there. He's now eligible to lead again. It all comes as Tim Paine was meant to make his comeback in Hobart today from neck surgery. That didn't happen because play was washed out. Cricket Australia, however, says they have no issue with him putting his hand up for the Ashes.
Tim is available for selection, and look, it's up to the selector. We had put in place a process for finding the next Australian captain that was going to take place over the summer in anticipation that Tim would one day retire. We're obviously accelerating that process, and we'll come to a conclusion of that, obviously in plenty of time before the Ashes.
England is now out of quarantine, and while some of their Test stars wasted absolutely no time in hitting up a golf course today, Joe Root was there, Ben Stokes and also Stuart Broad. They've now moved to Brisbane ahead of a couple of intra-squad games before the Ashes kicks off at the Gabba on December 8, Jack.
Thank you. Victoria and New South Wales kicked off their Sheffield match a day late. Carlton fast bowler Xavier Crone picked up 2 wickets in 2 deliveries in his first-class debut as James Pattinson produced one of the balls of the summer.
Pattinson pitches up, swings and knocks the castle over. Victoria on fire. James Pattinson joins the party.
The Blues were dismissed for 233. Former Victorian Chris Tremaine claimed 3 early wickets as the Vicks went to stumps at 3 for 68. And Elise Villani half-century gave the Stars something to defend against the Scorchers in their must-win match at Adelaide Oval. Perth needed 1 run to win off the final delivery.
She's got to hit the stumps. Oh, she's missed. So they had their chance. It went to Garth. The stumps were missed. The Scorchers win by a run.
The loss means the Stars are unable to make the finals. Reigning champions, the Sydney Sixers, were also eliminated after an 8-wicket loss to the Strikers. A North Melbourne Colt hero has suffered another cancer shock. Let's go live to Mitch Cleary. Mitch, the battle isn't over for Ben Cunnington.
Yeah, Jackie, Cunnington first underwent surgery for testicular cancer in July and was preparing to return to pre-season in coming weeks. North Melbourne today saying Cunnington will undergo chemotherapy after a routine post-surgery medical checkup detected a secondary cancer this week. He will now undergo a 9-week course of chemotherapy and is expected to make a full recovery. Fingers crossed, we said the 30-year-old midfield gun back on the field in 2022. Meantime, a Saint has entered the boxing ring as he looks to bounce back from a lacklustre season. Bradley Hill out to hit back. After an underwhelming 2021, Hill has laced up the gloves, joining Hawk Jarman Impey, boxing 4 to 5 times a week this off-season, while dropping 1.5 kilos.
I wanted to sort of tone up a little bit and get a little bit lighter, so I thought boxing would help me get to where I want to go, and yeah, I've just really enjoyed it now and in love with it a little bit.
Hill started the year on the ropes as the Saints plummeted down the ladder. The high-priced recruit to use a strong finish to the season to help springboard into his 3rd year at the club.
Probably a little bit of a struggle early on with a bit of pressure, outside noise, and I probably let it get to me a little bit, and I thought that my second half was a lot better.
So you've got to move then, you've got to move, let him behind you.
I feel like I'm moving pretty well, and I feel fit, and I feel like I'm in better shape than I was last year.
As he prepares to become a father in late December, the 28-year-old wants to stay in defence, having arrived at Moorabbin to play on the wing.
End of the year, we had a little bit of discussion, and I said I like the half-back role, and probably saying I like to keep exploring.
After a dismal season, missing finals, it's senior players like Hill the Saints hope will drive them back to September.
I want to have a year where I can be consistent all year and and help the St Kilda Footy Club get back to playing finals. You can talk about it as much as you want, but you just got to, on game day, we've got to show up.
Mitch Cleary, 7 News.
Former Socceroos teammates John Aloisi and Tony Popovic face off in their coaching debuts for Western United and Melbourne Victory tonight in Geelong. Melbourne City got off to a fast start in their season opener with 2 first-half goals against the Raw.
Goes himself, 2-0, Connor Metcalf. Melbourne City in cruise control.
But Brisbane fought back after the main break and were denied an equaliser due to offside. City held on to begin their title defence with a 2-1 win. Melbourne's Josh Giddey thought he had delivered the perfect pass to help the Thunder edge ahead late against the Bucks.
Yes! What a block to save the game-tying bucket!
Giannis like, not now. Not right now, young fella.
The Greek freak helped Milwaukee to a 96-89 point win. Elsewhere, LeBron James returned after 2 weeks on the sidelines with a side strain, but his 23 points weren't enough as the Lakers went down to the Celtics. Just a fortnight after claiming the biggest win of their fledgling training partnership, brothers Ben and JD Hayes have taken out the $500,000 Ballarat Cup.
Stripped across the track, Zaydani up on the inside, spray being painted, Yonkers, Zaydani beat Yonkers and then a girl.
Zaydani paid $8.40 for the win. Earlier, nothing could split Silent Sovereign and Just Benjamin, with race 7 ending in a dead heat. And you don't see that very often, Mike. And Brad Hill back in the ring.
Talk about fighting fit.
I know, right?
He's a star, Brad Hill, and I think he's going to
be nice to see him back in form.
Too. Okay, thanks, Jack. Melina Saris is next with a forecast, and Mel, I'm happy to say we're warming up.
Yeah, you'll be glad to know, Mike, the mercury will rise over the coming days, but we are expecting the next burst of wet weather by the middle of the week. I'll have all of those details right after the break.
On 7 News, like father, like son, the new bulldog breed. At home with the Darcys. Why it will be an emotional draft night for one of the AFL's hottest prospects. An inside AFL exclusive. Only on 7 News at 6.
It's warming up over the coming days, but some parts of the state could see some significant rainfall by midweek. It was a grey and cloudy morning, but we had plenty of sunny breaks throughout the afternoon, and that allowed our temperatures to climb, the city almost reaching 17 degrees. On the satellite, a high is in control this weekend as a low-pressure trough extends across northeastern Victoria. The high is forecast to approach Bass Strait tomorrow with another high over the Tasman. The trough will remain over northeastern Victoria. A quick check of our capitals for tomorrow. A possible shower, 30 degrees, 29 in Brisbane, rain in Sydney and lots of it. Mostly sunny in Adelaide, and it's partly cloudy in Hobart, 18 degrees there. Back to Victoria, our inland areas could see some isolated fog tomorrow morning. The south may have a few isolated showers during the morning, while the far northeast could get those showers during the afternoon. It'll be cool to mild and partly cloudy. Winds will be moderate to fresh, south to southeasterly. The northern half of the state looks really nice. It should make it into the mid-20s. Early morning fog is possible in the outer suburbs. We are expecting a partly cloudy day with just the slight chance of a shower in the morning. Southerly winds up to 35 k's an hour will become light in the late evening. Partly cloudy in the city tomorrow, 10 overnight before another top of 17 degrees. Monday is mostly sunny, 22. Tuesday is 25. Mostly sunny to start. There is the chance of showers later in the day. Wednesday is humid with showers, 23 degrees. Those showers continue on Thursday and Friday. And next Saturday, partly cloudy, 18 degrees. So we could see some significant wet weather in the middle of the week, but next weekend, so far, looking okay, Mike.
Yeah. Enough already. You know we're in a bad shape when we're celebrating mid-20s at the end of November, Mel.
I'll take the mid-20s and a little bit of dry weather over this weekend is nice as well.
Just some sunshine.
Exactly. And that's 7 News for this Saturday night. We'll have updates throughout the evening. For now, from the 7 News team, have a great night.